Well, let's turn to Sudan. The country's top general, who led Monday's coup, has defended the military takeover as necessary to prevent a civil war. Well, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has spoken to journalists 24 hours after he dissolved the civilian government, declared a state of emergency and arrested the civilian prime minister. Here's what he had to say.
The Prime Minister was staying at his home, but we were afraid he would be harmed. He is now staying with me at my home. We were sitting together yesterday evening, and he is carrying on with his life normally. He will return home when the crisis is over and all threats are gone. But for now, he is staying with me at my home.
On Monday, the general announced the end of a power-sharing deal with civilian leaders who'd been leading Sudan's democratic transition since the ousting of Omar al-Bashir back in 2019. Well, thousands took to the streets to demand a return to civilian rule. Protesters burned tyres and blocked roads. We're told 10 people died when soldiers opened fire. Despite the unrest, though, the protests continued for a second day. This was Khartoum earlier. As you can see, it's quieter. Shops are closed, phone and internet lines are severely disrupted. Central bank staff have reportedly gone on strike. And across the country, doctors are said to be refusing to work in military-run hospitals except in emergencies. International flights have been suspended until at least Saturday. Well, the BBC spoke to an activist in Khartoum who described the scene where she is.
What's actually happening is that the army is controlling the bridges between the three cities of Khartoum and then the army headquarters and the neighborhoods around it, like Ramalat neighborhood and Buri. Those are the neighborhoods closer to the army headquarters. Beside the bridges are open for people to pass, but you get harassed, beaten. Sometimes, we have two people that they broke their hands while passing the bridge to the Man City. And the streets are really blocked with barricades. Revolution is everywhere. Thousands of people are still on the street.
Well, Sudan's civilian leaders and their military counterparts have been at odds since Sudan's previous military leader, Omar al-Bashir, was overthrown 2 years ago. Their power-sharing agreement was designed to steer Sudan towards democracy, but that's proven fragile. There have been a number of failed coup attempts previously. The most recent was just over a month ago. Well, last week, Sudan's Prime Minister warned of a dangerous crisis. Regardless, some in Sudan doubt the coup will succeed. Here's the director of the human rights group Justice Africa Sudan.
We have been in military rule 54 years out of our 65 years of independence. And the military rules have actually run Sudan down in the last 65 years. This is why I don't think we want to repeat that. Democracy didn't get the chance to revive and survive in Sudan. That is why the young Sudanese generation have seen what freedom means. Freedom means good economy, freedom means good education, good health, accountability, no corruptions, and they cannot accept to go back again to the same old regime of corruption, nepotism, dictator, torture, human rights abuses. I think they determined that they will fight back, and they start the fighting even before General Burhan announced his statement. They start the fighting, and the fighting will continue.
Well, there has been widespread international condemnation. The US has suspended a $700 million aid package, demanding the civilian government is restored without preconditions. Here's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
We have made clear that we are deeply alarmed. Secretary Blinken put out a very strong statement yesterday by the actions taken 36 hours ago by the Sudanese security forces, including the arrest of multiple civilian officials and the detention of Prime Minister Hamdok. We believe it undermines the country's transition to democratic civilian rule, and we firmly reject the assertions that this is within the authority of the military leadership in Sudan. From our perspective, these actions are utterly unacceptable. They contravene the constitutional declaration, but more importantly, they contravene the aspiration of the Sudanese people.
Well, General Burhan had a lengthy military career under Omar al-Bashir, and many in Sudan fear a return to brutal autocratic rule. The general has powerful connections. Analysts point to ties to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. Well, Sally Nabil is in Cairo, and she told me how this is playing out there.
Actually, Egypt has been pretty cautious when it comes to reactions to what's happening in Sudan. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued a very brief statement yesterday saying that it supports the stability of Sudan and it calls on all parties to be committed to self-restraint. It did not describe what happened in Sudan as a coup, and it did not even explain what does it mean actually by stability. Does it mean siding with the army generals who took over power, or supporting the protesters who are calling for a democratic transition to civilian rule? And in fact, Egypt is viewed in Sudan as a strong supporter of the military leaders. That's what I heard from many Sudanese people when I was there in Khartoum right after former President Bashir left power. It is viewed as a strong backer of the army generals, and perhaps this is why the Egyptians were pretty cautious with the wording of the statement they issued yesterday. So they are just waiting to see how things are going to go and which party is going to have the upper hand.
And how real, Sally, is the threat that other powerful backers in the region might end up having to prop him up?
Actually, that's a pretty complicated question, because regional players, they do have a role in what's happening in Sudan, according to some experts I've been talking to. And we can see that in the reactions coming from the Gulf area, for example, like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates. They have said, they have been quite diplomatic, but they have said we support also the stability of Sudan. We side with the Sudanese people. But again, they did not refer to what happened as a coup. They did not criticize the army generals. And generally speaking, Egypt and some Gulf monarchs like Saudi Arabia and UAE are seen as strong backers of the army generals. On the other hand, we have another reaction coming from Turkey, for example, that said that it is pretty worried about what's happening. And yesterday, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, issued a statement saying that it's quite concerned about the coup attempt taking place in Sudan. So from the reactions, we can some sort of tell what kind of parties the regional key players are supporting.